And especially when you're talking about for some of these places like mid-60s for your Thursday. So let's talk about it, because it's not only the rain that's going to be spoiling some of our spring feelings, but also the cooler temperatures. Temperatures right now, a little bit of a split. You can see it's very mild across the south. Meanwhile, kind of chilly as you look up toward the northern tier, not far from average. In fact, this is kind of right around where you should be. Lower 30s in places like Detroit and Chicago, upper 30s in Pittsburgh and Charleston. But those cold alerts are there. We've got freeze warnings in place across portions of Iowa up into northern Illinois, across southern Michigan as well, and then some freeze watches, some frost advisories. So you can see that it is definitely starting to impact your mornings. Now, granted, are we in spring? Yes, but these temperatures, I tell you, they're really not that far from where we should be. For today, our highs in the lower 50s, upper 60s in St. Louis, upper 50s in Minneapolis. But watch what happens. We really see an influx of warmth across these cities like Omaha and Chicago. Chicago, you're going from the mid-60s today to much cooler by your weekend. 66 in Cincinnati, upper 60s in Nashville. But watch what happens by Friday, especially across the southern plains. We've got those temperatures below average. Saturday, the southern plains and the upper Mississippi River Valley. And then by Sunday, that number expands, and that is across the central U.S. with those temperatures below average. This is what it's going to go from on Friday into Monday. You can see much cooler temperatures on the way, Jordan. So I know that's not what we want for our weekend, but that's what some of us
it's up and down. We continue
we get over this hump day. For your Friday, you can see we've got rain spread out across portions of the middle of the country and up and down the eastern seaboard. Atlanta, a few storms around for you. Meanwhile, places like Chicago will be dry. Saturday, maybe you're headed out to the Nashville Food and Wine Festival. I'd say Saturday is your pick day in Nashville. It's going to be a little bit breezier, maybe a little rainier on Sunday. By Sunday, we see that rain again filling in up and down the eastern seaboard. Did you know that Sunday is actually National Blueberry Pie Day?
We woken up overnight because the severe weather will be triggering on our phones. And then if you're in Houston, tomorrow morning doesn't look like a picnic either.
Yeah, your morning commute isn't going to be a lot of fun. So if you can plan around that, it's all about kind of planning where you go to be safe, planning around the weather if you can, trying to avoid it.
Try if you can.
Although sometimes you can't. So let's talk about it, because we know all of that's going to continue moving eastward, and it's going to fill in eventually across the Gulf Coast states. So we're starting out this morning, just a little bit of rain activity moving through southern Tennessee, across northern Alabama at this point. But then you see those storms back to the west where the atmosphere is a little bit more unstable. Moving through the day today, a slight risk for some isolated storms here across the Gulf Coast and then down into the Florida Panhandle. But today is not the main day that we're focusing on that risk for severe storms across the Gulf Coast. It's really going to begin to ramp up as we head through tonight into tomorrow as well. So you can see this entering the western fringes of our severe possible area into portions of southern Louisiana as you're kicking off your Thursday morning. Your morning commute through New Orleans could be a little bit messy by the time you're getting to your lunch hour in Mobile. So one of those days where you want to take your lunch with you, you don't want to have to run out to go get it in Mobile or Montgomery tomorrow. Those storms continue blasting through the Gulf Coast as we head through the day on Thursday. And then a little bit of residual energy still hanging out there as that boundary is trying to make its way through the lower Mississippi River Valley tomorrow. Here's where we have torcons 2 to 3, places like Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola with a torcon of 3. You want to be cognizant of the fact that you could see a couple tornadoes, the damaging winds certainly possible as well with the hail, and then also the flash flooding tomorrow, especially a bullseye along that Gulf Coast where it's already been pretty wet. We're going to continue with that severe weather risk back over the southern plains as we head through Friday. We'll have more on that, so stick around. About other types of weather that could be impacting your travel here. We've got that chance for severe storms today, especially during the afternoon and evening. I know as we're getting off of work, trying to go to sleep there in Dallas, down through Waco, over toward Shreveport even. All modes of severe weather, what does that mean for you? Damaging winds, a few tornadoes possible. Also, that possibility for some large hail and some very heavy rain, which could make those windshield wipers work overtime. So your morning rush should be just fine. You're probably feeling some of that little bit of moisture, that bit of mugginess in the air there around Dallas. By lunchtime, you've got the storms beginning to bubble up. It won't be quite as widespread as later in the day, but they will be there. So you might want to take the lunch along with you so you don't have to run out to get it. And then by your afternoon commute, you're in the thick of the storms, and that's continuing into the later parts. So plan accordingly. You might want want to give yourself a little extra time, or just watch that radar, maybe even leave work a little early if you can today. In terms of airport impacts, some impacts across the southern plains, the lower Mississippi River Valley, up and down Florida. You've got that chance for some storms, feisty storms again there for the Sunshine State. Atlanta said a little too long. Lynette.
All right, good advice.
To the beach right now, which is always a lot of fun, right? Unless you got the forecast that we have today, which includes that risk for some severe storms. So let's talk about it, because we are going to have that risk across the south for some stronger storms. I actually think we should be looking at a different model or a different set of graphics right now, because there should definitely be Florida. And that's what we should be talking about. I think we're going to get that here in a second. If not, I'll just talk to you about the Northeast, but we're supposed to be talking about Florida. Severe drought conditions. We are, hey guys, I'm back. We are in drought across portions of the state, and this is the drier portion of the year. The rainy season not starting usually until as we head through mid-May, but you hate to see it when it is this abnormally dry. Now, I mentioned we're headed to the beach, but not the best forecast for it today, because we've got that risk for severe storms, and this is highlighted here, especially that risk for some large hail. That atmosphere is dynamic, and that is going to bring us that risk for hail, maybe 2 inches or greater. Of course, you know, whenever you get the storms around, you could see some flooding. So if you wanted to do something across Florida this morning, is the time to do it. Look at these temperatures: 69 in West Palm, 73 in Miami. Orlando, good morning, sunny and in the upper 60s. Watch what happens real quick, though. We're going to time this out for you. You see the storms beginning to bubble up as we head into the middle part of your afternoon. Miami, Dade County, it's going to be a wet time. You can see those storms traversing the state from west to east. So, Jordan, you're going to have to keep an eye on the sky. Although it looks like for a lot of us, it's going to be in the interior of the state.
Yeah. So, you know.
Nature's alarm clock waking up the southern plains. More than 22 million people at risk for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds. That includes major metros like Dallas, where the threat's going to increase throughout the afternoon and evening. This is America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Felicia Combs, alongside meteorologists Lynette Charles and Jordan Steele. Now, Jordan, that severe threat is going to ramp up as we head throughout the day today, but we already have some storms bubbling up this morning.
Yeah, Texas Panhandle.
Where I am, I would say it's a nice, balmy 59 degrees in the studio. I've definitely got goosebumps. No,
Exactly.
when I sit out in the woods, we were just discussing how nice it is when these screens pop up in the woods randomly and we get to do weather on them. The beauty of IMR. Let's talk about what is happening here across the south this morning. So Huntsville, I was like, man, you've had this nice little rain shower. It's this nice little complex moving through Huntsville. You've gotten almost a quarter inch of rain just in the past 2 hours. It's a nice little soggy start. The roads will be a little bit wet as you're heading out, but the storms are as you look back toward the west across that Mississippi River Valley. For today, we've got a small risk for some stronger storms across the lower Mississippi River Valley, stretching over into southern Georgia, northern Florida. But really, we start to see our risk ramping up for this area tomorrow. So while we will have a little bit of rain and storm action moving through, maybe some of these cells into this evening and tonight could be just a bit feisty with some heavy rain and some small hail. But tomorrow is the blockbuster day for the Gulf Coast for our risk of severe storms. So you can see the highlighted region here. And I would say lots of focus on, you know, Mobile and New Orleans and that darker shading, even up into Birmingham. Some of those storms could be a bit feisty as we're heading through the afternoon. You can see that sweeping through Mobile Bay as we head into the lunch hour and early afternoon, and then still a little messy weather hanging around even after that sun goes down across portions of Mississippi and Alabama. For tomorrow, torcons of 2 to 3. So the severe risk indicating maybe damaging winds up around 60 miles an hour, maybe some large hail, but then also that risk for tornadoes, a few possible for cities like Gulfport and Daphne over into Pensacola as well. Not just that, but that risk for some flash flooding certainly there tomorrow through your Friday morning, a bullseye over that Gulf Coast where we'll have plenty of rounds of storms moving through. We've got our first rounds that moves through, and then into the weekend a second. As that second system kind of moves eastward, we see that low forming, and that brings us another chance for soggy weather and stronger storms. By Friday, you can see where we have that risk for severe storms bubbling up across Texas. Man, Texas really could use a break, but I'd say there's another state that could also use a break at this point, too.
I know. We've been giving a lot of attention to loan.
Any plans that you don't want to keep, you got a perfect excuse. If you wanted to keep them, we're sorry. Let's talk about what's going to be happening, because the temperatures are going to be maybe impacting some of your plans as well. country's kind of split in half. You can see the middle ground here, Wichita, Nashville, Raleigh in the upper 40s. South of that, pretty mild. North of that, a little on the chilly side. In fact, cool enough that we've got temperatures down around freezing in Chicago and Detroit, upper 30s in Charleston, Louisville, mid 40s for you. So we do have some cold alerts hanging out this morning, some freeze warnings, some frost advisories. You can see that there. So I know everyone's been, once you start to get a little bit warm, everyone's itching to get those plants out there and do some planting. But so I hope you waited. I would assume if you grow plants in this region, you know you got to wait a little bit longer. Today, highs in places like Chicago, lower 50s, Omaha, upper 60s, same thing in St. Louis. By tomorrow, look at that wave of warmth across the Great Lakes region, upper 60s in Minneapolis, mid 60s in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, it's going to be mid 60s for you. But change is coming this weekend for portions of the country. Take a look at where we'll be well below average there on Friday. Southern Plains, that's really a focal point on Saturday, and then by Sunday, you're seeing those temperatures fall across the central U.S. Quick look at those temperatures. For instance, St. Louis, 69 on Friday. By Monday, those temperatures falling for places like Detroit and Indianapolis in the 40s and 50s. Lynette.
All right,
Jordan, let's take a look at your dog walking forecast in case you're trying to get out there and give those pooches some fresh.
Through the overnight hours, which means we need to stay weather aware tonight and then in Houston tomorrow.
Yeah, and then it's all going to continue
Downstream.
filling in eastward. We've got the severe threat today. We've got it tomorrow as well. Job security weather. You want to know what's going on, so you got to tune in so you make sure you know what's happening, especially when you're talking about those nighttime after sunset type of storms. It can be a little scary, right, when you can't see what's coming, so you want to make sure you have some way to get those alerts. I personally sleep with earplugs, so I'm like, I hope I would be able to hear that alert if it was coming through. So if you sleep with earplugs, make sure you have it turned up loud. We've got some showers moving through North Alabama into North Georgia at this point, through Chattanooga eventually, and then some storms as you look back farther west. Let's time it out for you as we head through your Wednesday. Today is not the big day across the Gulf Coast. Could you get a couple storms popping up, a couple little cells here that might be a little bit feisty this afternoon? Certainly, but we're focusing most of that focus in terms of that possibility for severe weather as we head into Thursday. So here's your Thursday morning. You can see the darker shading here coming in across the Gulf Coast for your Thursday as that storm system blasts eastward. Here's lunchtime. So places like Mobile, you're in it. You're in it as those storms blast through. Daphne, you're going to be feeling some of those storms with the damaging winds possible, the large hail. And then we also can't rule out a few tornadoes. We've got torcons of 2 to 3 for this area. New Orleans, I'm talking to you over through Gulfport, Pensacola as well. With that torcon of 3, a few tornadoes possible. And this is going to be quite a messy weather system. So you want to make sure you're definitely paying attention to those alerts. We'll also have that possibility for a bit of flash flooding, not just through the Gulf Coast, but all the way up into the Ohio River Valley, as we've had a pretty soggy time with systems moving through. Now, our focus for severe storms on Friday goes back to Texas, so we'll see a little bit of a break, and then it's right back there. We'll have more on all of this coming up. Us are going to have the weather impacting our travel in a big way as we head through this afternoon and this evening. Our risk for severe storms ramping up for cities like Dallas and Waco over into Shreveport as we head through the afternoon and the evening. We could have some damaging wind gusts, maybe up around 60 miles an hour, could blow around those high profile vehicles. You've got that possibility for some large hail, which can cause problems, and heavy rain, of course, creating ponding issues and visibility issues. Those windshield wipers can only go so fast, so when that rain is coming down, it can be a problem. Your morning in this region is just fine. By lunchtime, that chance for a couple storms here or there, but it certainly will be more prevalent and more widespread as we head into your afternoon rush, with those storms filling in for cities like Denton, over into Dallas and Edgewood as well. And again, some of those storms could be a bit feisty. So it's not only going to impact you on the roadways, but also in the skies. And as we know, it's not always about what the weather is doing where you are. It could be where your plane is coming from or where you're headed. So certainly some weather-related delays are possible today and into tomorrow, especially for MSY there in New Orleans. You might have some of those feisty storms around Atlanta up into Nashville. Your Thursday travel at your airports could be impacted, and up and down Florida today and tomorrow with that chance for storms. And we know that we also have that chance for hail for Florida today. For sure. Take a look at the Sunshine State, because it might not be living up to its name everywhere today. Come hang out on the beach, right? Well, the beach might not be the best place over the next several days here in Florida. Let's take a look like the different kind of possibilities in terms of rainfall that we could see through the end of the week. So the European model is predicting quite a bit of rain just north of Tampa, stretching down through Tampa, around Orlando, and portions of the east coast of Florida as well. Now keep that in your mind as I show you the American model. The American model has a completely different idea. It's bringing rain to the state, but it's putting most of the heavier rain up in the panhandle. Now, we're going to cross our fingers that the European model is actually right, because as you take a look at the drought monitor, you'll notice that the worst of the drought here in Florida is around Tampa, north of Tampa, through central Florida as well. So if the European model was right, maybe we could kind of chip away at that a bit, although as we know with that much rain, it could create some issues. Our issues for today are going to include that risk for severe weather, so some damaging winds possible, but then also some hail, and we could see some large hail in these shaded areas. Okeechobee, Lake Okeechobee, you're included in that, up through Orlando into Daytona Beach with hail 2 inches in diameter or greater. Fantastic chef's kiss this morning. I hope you got your morning run in early, or maybe you're headed out to do that as the sun is shining. 69 in West Palm, 69 in Tampa as well. Changes will come as we head throughout the day. Now watch what happens. It's going to be a fabulous day for much of the day, but you start to see those storms bubbling up over 95 as we head into the early afternoon. Miami-Dade County, you're getting in on that. And then watch how this kind of sets up here. It's going to start across interior areas and then push its way eastward, although I will say most of that activity for the afternoon is going to be pinned to the interior. So your beach day might be okay. You just got to make sure there's no lightning near you. Jordan.
Yeah, and beach morning.